One of my friends disappeared in the mirror, and when I tell you that nobody has been able to understand what happened to him, I mean it, nobody. It was one of the most bizarre cases of vanishing that we have ever seen. And no, there are no spooners or magical explanations for this one, only what I am about to tell you. It all started like any other day. I got up from bed, made myself some breakfast, watched a little bit of TV, and then grabbed my stuff to go meet my friends. One of my friends, let's call him Ben, had just moved into town, and we wanted to go check out his new place. But when I got downstairs, I noticed that Ben's car wasn't where he said it would be, and so I called him. The call went to voicemail, which was odd because Ben never set his phone to voicemail. He also didn't answer his phone, which was extremely odd because he always answered his phone. So I tried calling again and again and again, but no answer. And this really worried me because I knew something was wrong. I remember vividly how I felt at that moment. I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. My heart was beating faster and faster, and I couldn't help but think the worst. I knew I had to get to Ben's house as fast as possible. I quickly finished my breakfast, grabbed my keys, and ran out the door. I drove as fast as I could while keeping a lookout for Ben's car. When I finally found it parked in front of his house, I practically flew out of my car and ran to his front door. But when I opened it, I was met with a sight that will forever be burned into my memory. In Ben's living room, on the floor, right in the middle of it all, was a pair of feet. I don't want to sound dramatic, but seeing those feet lying right there completely lifeless sent a chill down my spine that I have never forgotten. I fell to my knees and started screaming for help. What had happened to Ben? Where was he? And then I noticed something even more disturbing. Those feet were attached to Ben's body, but Ben's body was not in the living room. Ben's body was in the mirror. When I first saw it, it was like a scene straight out of a horror movie. His body was just hanging upside down inside the mirror, slowly fading away, as if he were turning into a ghost. It was unbelievable. Tried to reach out to touch him, but my hand went straight through the mirror and hit the wall behind it. The shock of seeing my friend literally disappearing in front of my eyes was too much for me. I screamed and ran outside, hoping that maybe in the fresh air, I would be able to think more clearly. That is when I noticed a note on Ben's front door. It simply said, "Help me." And then underneath it, I noticed a trail of footprints leading away from his house. I followed them, desperately hoping that they would lead me to my friend, but they didn't. They led me to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. When I got inside, I noticed that the footprints stopped abruptly, as if Ben had vanished into thin air. I searched everywhere, but there was no sign of him. I climbed onto some boxes and looked out of the window, hoping to see him walking away in the distance, but I didn't. I called out his name, but only silence answered me. It was as if he had disappeared off the face of the earth. And here's the thing. We searched everywhere. We tore apart that warehouse, but we never found a single trace of him. We contacted the police, but they didn't have any luck either. They even brought in canine units and helicopters, but nothing. It was like he had vanished into thin air. As the days went by, the hope of finding him alive began to dwindle. And I couldn't help but think back to that note he left behind, begging for help. What had happened to him? Was he trapped somewhere? Someone kidnapped him? Or was I imagining things? I started seeing a therapist to help me cope with the trauma of losing my friend. But even she couldn't help me. She suggested that maybe I had imagined the whole thing, that I had somehow created Ben in my mind and that he had never really existed. But I knew that wasn't true. I had known Ben for years. We had shared secrets, laughter, and tears. How could I have imagined him? And then there was the mirror. I had thrown it away in a fit of anger, but it had still been there when the police had come to investigate. They had examined it, but they said that it was nothing more than an old, dusty mirror. But I knew there was something strange about it. Who disappears into a mirror? It didn't make sense. But one day I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went back to the warehouse where I had found the footprints. It was a long shot, but I decided to dig up the ground where the footprints had ended. I then, believe it or not, I found a small hole. I dug deeper and discovered a small box. Inside of it, I found a key. I didn't know it at the time, but that key was the key to everything. The key fit perfectly into a small hole in the wall behind Ben's mirror. And when I opened it, it revealed a small, dark passageway. It was barely big enough for a person to fit through. And when I shone my flashlight inside, I could see that it led down into the ground. I knew I should probably call the police, but I was too curious. I wanted to know what had happened to Ben, and so I carefully made my way through the passageway and descended down into the darkness. At first it was hard to see anything, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I began to make out shapes, and then I saw it. In front of me was a room, and inside of that room, there was a coffin. It was made of a dark wood and was ornately carved. And on top of it, I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was Ben's journal. I opened it and began to read. Ben had been writing about strange occurrences in the area, about people who had gone missing without a trace. He had been writing about a local legend, the legend of the vanishing man. According to Ben's research, there had been several cases of people disappearing in the town over the years. All of them had one thing in common. They had all vanished in mirrors. He had become obsessed with the legend and had decided to investigate it further. He had found out that all of the missing persons had been taken to the same place, a secret underground facility hidden beneath the town, and he believed that he was being stalked by the same entity that had taken them. In his last entry, he wrote, "I can feel its presence watching me, waiting for me to make a move. I know it's out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for me to let my guard down." And then, in another journal entry, he wrote, "I think I know how to stop it. There is a ritual, an ancient ritual that is said to banish the vanishing man. It requires a sacrifice, something precious to break the curse." Ben had been terrified, but he had gone ahead with the ritual anyway. He had written down the words of the ritual in his journal and had placed it on top of his coffin. And now here I was, standing in front of his coffin with the journal in my hands. I felt a cold breeze on my neck, and I turned around to see a dark, shadowy figure standing in the doorway. It was tall and thin, like a skeleton, and it seemed to be made out of the darkness itself. I screamed and tried to run, but it was too late. It reached out and grabbed me, and then everything went black. I woke up. I was lying on the floor. I sat up and looked around. Where was I? This was in Ben's living room. I got up and looked around. Everything was exactly as it had been before. Then I noticed a figure standing in the mirror. It was my reflection, or rather it was Ben's reflection. He was smiling at me. I reached out to touch him, but as my fingers made contact with the glass, it shattered. And when the pieces cleared, Ben was gone. I stood there staring at the broken mirror, wondering what had happened. Had I been dreaming? Had I imagined it all? Or had I just stumbled upon something that I wasn't supposed to? The truth is, I still don't have the answers. But one thing I do know is that I will never look at a mirror the same way again. All right, everyone, that's my story. Now I'm gone. Go hide in the basement until my friend comes back from wherever he went. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.